Coming up on this week's episode of TechSNAP, Experian gets caught selling your information to identity thieves, hacking a router with a single UDP packet, and the cloud service that automatically deletes your files. Then it's a huge batch of your questions, our answers, and much, much more on this week's episode of TechSNAP. Hi everyone, and welcome to TechSNAP. This is episode 133 of Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly Systems Network and Administration podcast. This episode is brought to you by our two fine sponsors, GoDaddy.com and Ting.com. I'll tell you more about those great sponsors as the show goes on. And our live stream, well, that's brought to you by the always scaling Scale Engine over at ScaleEngine.com. You got to go check that out. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week is our host, the admin, the tech, and the teacher, Mr. Alan Jude. Hey there, Alan.
Hey, Chris, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Episode 133 is kind of crazy, Alan. It's kind of crazy.
Well, yeah, every episode's kind of crazy.
Okay, but admit it now. See, on BSD now, did you guys just do episode 8 this week? 7? Yep. So, 8. Okay. 8. Now, in comparison, right? I mean...
133 is a lot of episodes.
Exactly. It really is it's pretty wild. So when you hear about the shows that go to like 1,000, that's just... I have mad respect for that. Well, we have a huge show.
Well, usually the shows that go to 1,000 are like
daily,
5 days a week or more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
If we did that, we'd be on like 600 and something by now, right?
So not only in this episode is there a crazy news segment that we're going to get through,
665,
and we have a ton of feedback that we're going to cover. But in the feedback segment, Alan's also going to do a show and tell with some new gear that he got.
Yes.
And so he's even going to open it up for us and show us the insights. So we'll be doing that. And then a huge roundup.
The first thing I do when I get new gear is I want to look at its bits.
Right. And you know what? If I can look at it before I buy, I like that too. Roundup, though. Roundup is so big this week, I didn't even add a link. I was like, oh, there's too much Roundup here.
I was going through the stories and I'm like, oh, well, we got these 3 big stories. Yeah. So all of you other stories, I'm sorry, you're going to have to go at the bottom of the show.
That's all right. I got a few evergreens.
And it's
I'll sprinkle them in. Don't worry.
Right. It's like, well, I can't have... That's too many for just me. So here, I'll give this one to Chris and this one to Chris. And oh, the roundup's full. Shit.
It is full, but it works. I mean, there's some interesting stuff in there. And I got some cool stuff that I'm gonna save in my pocket. I'll roll it out for next week. All right. Well, it seems like lately we're either talking about 2 guys out there that are making a name for themselves in the independent security research space, and that's Bruce Schneier, or Krebs on security.
Yes.
I think Krebs, right? I'm saying it right this time.
Krebs, we finally said it right.
Yeah, and he leads with our first story this week, which is probably one a lot of you heard in the headlines. And the short version of the headline was, Experian is selling customer information to scammers. Wow. That's quite a headline now. So what's actually going on?
So an identity theft service that sold social security numbers, driver licenses, and what are called fulls, basically entire profiles on a person, including like a list of their bank accounts.
A full. That's nice. Yeah. That's lovely.
Well, it's spelled with a Z. It's a hacker term. It's just all the information you need on a person to steal their identity. So this identity theft service was selling fulls on people. And so Krebs was investigating. And it turns out that the service that was selling this data to hackers had purchased this data from Experian, which is one of the 3 major credit bureaus in the United States. So, the companies that handle your credit report that are supposed... And also, Experian sells identity theft protection services.
Yeah.
It's like, monitor your credit report to make sure that if anything fishy pops up, you can identify it sooner.
You know what's interesting, too, unrelated...
While we're also over here selling your data to the people that are going to steal your identity so that you'll buy our service.
Kind of tangentially related to this, we covered a story last night on Unfiltered that there's 435 different agencies and institutions that check with Experian to get information on you. It ranges everything from your employers to insurance and everything. And whatever so Experian sort of provides information to all kinds of different kind of companies. They have like services that these companies can sign up for where they just pay a monthly fee and get unfettered access.
Yep.
All right. So anyways, my diversion aside.
So back in November 2011, Krebs on Security ran a story about an underground site called superget.info, which was a fraudster-friendly site that basically sold the ability to look up a full social security number, birth date, driver's license records, financial information, bank accounts, everything on millions of Americans. Each social security number search on superget.info returned customer records that were marked with a set of mysterious-looking source ID identifiers and things like that, like TH, MV, NCO, and a bunch of things like that. And so Krebs put out a call on his blog for anybody that knew what those might meant or what they might mean. And people sent in, their guesses and stuff. But somebody emailed back and is like, I recognize those.
Oh, see, that's the great thing about crowdsourcing some of this stuff.
Exactly. So Krebs on Security had a reader who worked at usinfosearch.com. And he said that those identifiers are like the data they get when they buy information from Experian. And so when contacted about the reader's claim, US InfoSearch CEO Mark Martin said the data sold by the ID theft service looked like it was the same, like the ID theft service was buying the data from the same place they were, which was this company called Court Ventures.
Like a middleman.
Which is a third-party company which US InfoSearch had previously bought data from. So founded in 2001, Court Ventures described itself as it would aggregate, repackage, and distribute public record data obtained from over 1,400 state and county sources.
Oh, good.
In March of 2012, Court Ventures was purchased by Experian, one of the three major credit bureaus. According to Martin, the proprietor of SuperGet Info had gained access to Experian's database by posing as a U.S.-based private investigator.
Posing?
Yes. So basically just claim to be a U.S. private investigator and you can sign up for this service and do searches on people. Even though there are very strict laws that are, the Experian's only allowed to sell data to U.S. entities. But the guy who was pretending to be a U.S. private investigator was actually in Vietnam and paid by wire transfer from a bank in Singapore.
So they are
should
officially
have set up all kinds of red flags, but apparently didn't.
So you have a guy who's posing as a private investigator. He passes whatever supposed checks they go through, ends up subscribing for their monthly unfettered access plan, and he's wire transferring the money from Vietnam.
No, from Singapore.
Singapore.
Either way, not the U.S., and should have raised red flags.
Wow.
Martin said he first learned of the ID theft service after he got calls from the U.S. Secret Service and other law enforcement agencies that were investigating Experian, and they had obtained a grand jury subpoena against that company to figure out what was going on.
Oh, so they were looking into it.
So while the private investigator ruse may have gotten the fraudster past Experian or Court Ventures' original screening process, there were other signs that should have alerted Experian to the potential fraud. For example, the fact that they were getting access on millions of people, not like, individual people,
cases,
right?
Not like one or two cases here and there.
and the fact that they were paying for their monthly data access charges by wire transfer from Singapore. So Experian declined multiple requests for an interview, but in a written statement sent to Krebs on Security, Experian acknowledged the broad outline of the story and said it is working with the Secret Service to bring a Vietnamese national to justice in connection with the online ID theft service.
Wow.
And then the story goes on to mention that they actually arrested the guy and they found the court documents of him being the trial starting in, I think it was New Hampshire or something.
So it sounds like Experian is pretty much just waiting to give away this information. If you just pass a few checks, write us a check, because their whole business is collecting this and selling it.
Yeah, exactly. Their whole business is aggregating data on people and selling it. They're not just a credit bureau where their job is to keep track of people's credit and do, deal with banks and so on. They love selling data to advertisers and anybody else who will pay them. And I think, the credit bureau type thing should be separated from that completely.
Yeah.
But yeah, companies that are willing to sell your data to anybody shouldn't be allowed to have highly sensitive data like your social insurance number and your bank list of your bank accounts and things like that.
Now, this is not the same thing, but I picture like, not not so much Google, but companies like Facebook, where their business also in some ways has some similarities to Experian, where it behooves them to collect as much information about you as possible.
Yep.
It could totally be a potential where down the road, Facebook sort of sells information about people, even if it's sort of anonymized.
Well, that's what they're selling now.
I suppose so, to
their whole thing
advertisers.
is that they don't sell specific data about you, but they have all that data so they can sell an ad that says only target people between this age and yes. The amount of control you have is amazing.
You could even be like,
show me only people that live here or grew up here
that have cats
between ages of this and that.
Yeah,
have a cat
that like Star Trek.
Band.
Yeah. You can get crazy specific.
You can be like, oh, when we had a gaming cafe, we were like, we want people between the ages of 16 and 29 who don't have a girlfriend.
Right.
And you get very specific.
And you could even now, you can boost...
Which makes certain things even more annoying. Like people who are on Facebook and are marked as being married and still get dating ads.
Yeah, that's true. It's like, better. So I wonder if that isn't going to be one of the long-term things, is maybe they just go more overtly in that direction where... it's crazy that you can... it seems like it'd be fun just to become a private investigator and just get a subscription to this stuff, because... the money you could make in identity theft compared to the fee.
We actually looked at doing private investigation as part of our thing when we were a consulting company, because we had done a couple things like this one customer, they had an employee who had a work laptop, and then he all of a sudden quit and moved to the States to work for a competitor, and they were quite sure that he had stolen trade secrets and taken them with him. So they got the laptop back after much nagging and some legal threats and so on. And then we had to do a forensic analysis of the laptop to see if we could find any evidence that he had been in collaboration with the company in the States before he quit. And we actually found it in the temporary internet files from his Internet Explorer, which he shouldn't have been using. There was the Hotmail spell checker saves drafts to run because the spell checker runs in like ActiveX or something, right? So this is a while ago, like 2008 or something. But anyway, so it runs on the temporary file on your hard drive. Rather than running in the browser, right? It's not JavaScript based like the newer ones. So there was temporary draft versions of the emails and just cached copies of the emails that he had received and so on. So we were actually able to pull out emails he had sent to the company asking about this and that, and actually receive, showing that he had picked out a place to live and set up his electric bill and stuff in the States while he was still working for the company that he was stealing from.
Oh wow! And
find proof that he was sending attachments and all of this.
Nail him.
So we looked at actually getting a private investigator's license because you have to go and there's a hearing and all that kind of stuff, background checks.
Or you could just pretend and then just buy the Experian membership.
Right.
Oh, a little bit of a sad face there.
But that story is even deeper than we went into it. So if you're, I really recommend you go over there and read it. And I'm sure there'll be some follow-up stuff on it as well.
What do you think about, too, just as an aside, with Krebs, he's Krebs?
Yep, Krebs.
Really just full-on deep diving, researching this stuff. Bruce Schneier, same thing. It's are we seeing
Bruce Schneier's mostly
writing?
He got hired by the newspaper,
The Guardian,
to provide analysis on the
Snowden leaks,
the Snowden stuff. Yeah. Although he's actually a real cryptographic researcher, right? He wrote helped write the pseudo random number generator Yarrow, which is what FreeBSD uses for its dev random, and then he wrote second one, a successor to that.
Well, that's kind of my point. Is they actually both seem legit, which is sort of weird.
Sort of. Well, the opposite of your what's that other guy? Tries to do stuff. Has a podcast.
The other thing that
Steve Gibson.
Oh,
is more like a charlatan.
Ouch! Well,
he's never published a paper on anything.
But we like him. He's a nice guy.
He's a nice guy, but
but here's my point. I think it's pretty awesome that both these guys are kind of, in some extent, going it on their own. Both Krebs and Bruce Schneier sort of have their own domain. They own it. They publish there. they work in other contexts with their clients and publications too. But I think it's pretty cool, and I like that a lot. I think that is sort of important in this kind of security research, that it be
right, because a lot of
more
most of the other stuff we see is from the labs, like Kaspersky, Symantec,
Intel, even IBM.
Right, but what is it? The threat post. Which virus company is behind that? Is that Kaspersky?
That's a great question. I don't remember.
I think it is. I forget what company is behind. Yes, it's threat post is Kaspersky, and we've done lots of PDFs from Kaspersky, but also ESET. We've done a couple of research papers with them and a bunch of other ones.
Yep. And it's not that those aren't valid, but you always have to weigh the source in those cases. And
a little bit, but mostly it's valid research still, right?
Yeah.
It's peer-reviewed, published research.
Yeah.
Well, not peer-reviewed, but they publish it and then
we peer review it.
Yeah. Right. It's great to see this kind of research actually getting done. Because remember, it was also the guy that actually wrote in the
right. What was that?
He bought some used industrial control stuff on eBay and hacked it up on his bed in his apartment.
Yeah, that's right.
And then now he actually works for a security research company doing it full time.
But awesome.
He wrote in and he was thanking us for explaining why it mattered in such a way that he could then explain it to his family.
Yeah, right.
Because his family didn't understand it and he was having trouble explaining it. And we managed to slim it down to why it mattered.
Yeah.
It wasn't the RuggedCom one specifically, I don't think, but it was something like that, yes.
Mm-hmm. I remember they were widely deployed too.
Yes.
All right. Well, how about we take a quick break right here and thank our first sponsor before we get to our next story, and that is Ting.com. That's right. Ting is mobile that makes sense, and my mobile service provider. Now, if you've listened to the TechSNAP program for even a few episodes, you've probably noticed that Ting is on here quite a bit. And you might ask yourself, why does Ting keep coming back to the TechSNAP program? Well, dear audience member, the answer is simply you. Because Ting knows that there's two things about you, most likely if you're watching the TechSNAP program. Number one, you probably follow cutting-edge new technology developments. And a lot of times you probably are a bit of a technology trendsetter in your social group. I would assume, maybe in your business or whatever. But also, there's a good chance you're intelligent enough to know that the existing telco model involves screwing their customers by strapping them into restrictive contracts and essentially abusing them for every single penny that they can milk out of them. And Ting wants to show you that there is a better way and that you can help lead the Ting revolution. And you can start by going over to techsnap.ting.com, where you can take $25 off your first month of service or $25 off your first handset. And if you have a handset that is Sprint network compatible, go over to their devices tab, where you can go check out their used devices over here, used devices, and you can either A, buy one of their already refurbished units, or B, check out what other Ting customers are selling too. How cool is that? Now they offer that right there. You can see there's a Samsung S2 for $120. You'd have that unlocked off contract. And then, of course, there's no early termination fee. And one of the greatest things about Ting around is you only pay for what you use. You can keep track on their awesome dashboard, and you pay a $6 flat rate for any line. And then if you use a certain amount of minutes, they'll just add them up at the end of the month, and that's what you end up paying for. And you have an Android app where you can keep track of that. You can set alerts. It's very easy to manage. You don't end up overpaying for something that you don't use. And, of course, other companies out there might try little gimmicks like rollover minutes. Yeah, that's cute and adorable. Why even do that in the first place? Why even play that game? Just pay for what you use. These are the modern smartphone devices. These new computing platform devices require a digital connection. And that's why I love that my Ting account includes, as part of the service, hotspot and tethering. And it's just included as my data usage. I don't have to have some special extension on my plan. And if I ever get stuck and I ever have a problem, I can just call 1-855-TING-FTW anytime between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. And a real Canadian answers the phone and will help you troubleshoot your problem. Not just troubleshoot it, because that's selling what they do short. It's like if you had a geek friend who totally knew Android and could totally push all the buttons for you at the telco, like if you had a buddy that worked there, that's what the Ting support is. You call them up, the person that answers the phone, they'll give you their name, they'll give you their direct line, they'll work with you, they'll own their problem until it's completely finished. It becomes their problem. And I think that's a totally new way to do telco support. I mean, I've never had a mobile provider. I have worked with telephone companies my entire career. I have never worked with a company like Ting. So go to techsnap.ting.com to get started. Average Ting monthly bill, $21 per device. That is not too bad. And if you've got one of those new Moto X phones, check out the Ting blog. They've got some tips on how you can take full advantage of all of the great new features in the Moto X. So go over to techsnap.ting.com. Check out what you can do with that savings calculator, too. Now is a better time than ever. There's lots of great extra perks to sign up right now with Ting. They've got an early termination relief program. Take $75 off the penalty if you have to cancel from your existing provider, up to $75. And it's really easy. You just grab your new device, your port number, then you submit your ETF claim, and Ting's going to help you out with that. And right now they've got a few other little surprises that I'll tell you about more in the future. I just want you to go over there and try it out because it's with the holidays coming up, now's the time to do it. And they've got a great range of devices from the top-of-the-line Moto X and HTC One down to feature phones where you can get them $60, $70 off contract with no early termination fee. That's really the way to go. So go to techsnap.ting.com, and thanks to Ting for sponsoring the TechSNAP program. Love it. Got my HTC One with the Android 4.3, and just to be an iOS 7 hipster, I don't know if you can see it on camera, I added a background with parallax movement when I moved my phone. So that way my background, just like an iOS 7. Huh? Take that, iPhone users. What's up? It's actually kind of cool. It's a fireplace. I want to go in my phone, Alan, and I just want to sit in that chair and read a good book. Oh, speaking of books, I started Zero Day.
Yep.
Wow, does that start strong?
Yep.
Wow, does that start strong? I don't think there's a book that can start stronger than that. That is an intense first couple of minutes, and I went with the audiobook, and the guy does the different voices so great during that.
Yep.
Oh man, if you guys have not, Alan mentioned a couple of days ago, Zero Day. It is such a good read. I'm thinking I'm at chapter 4 right now, and I'm just totally loving it the entire time. All right, Alan. Well, I think it was last week we talked about some vulnerabilities in D-Link routers, right, where you could easily gain access to the backdoor administration account for whatever reason.
Well, yeah, basically you could send a certain header and get in with no get into the admin interface with no password. Well, this one's even worse. These are Tenda routers from China, the W302R, and as it turns out, a bunch of other models as well. So the Tenda routers use a modified version of the Go-Ahead web server, which is very popular with embedded devices because it's like 115 kilobytes of RAM, and it doesn't need anything other than base libc. It doesn't need other libraries.
Okay.
Like I think Nginx needs like a regular expression library and a bunch of other stuff.
Old school.
Right. Well, no, it's
just
specifically designed for embedded platforms
yes,
where
exactly.
there's every
Minimum.
bit of storage and RAM is expensive.
Yeah.
So the custom version that Tenda uses contains a modification where the web server, when it starts, creates a UDP socket and listens on port 7329. If you send a packet to that port that starts with the string W302R_MFG, so the model of the router _MFG, meaning manufacturer, then the next byte of the packet, there's the string, a null byte, and then the next byte, if it's E, then it will respond to that UDP packet with an answer. It's kind of like a ping functionality.
Oh, really?
If the next character is a 1, then it will allow you to run the IWPriv command, which I'm not sure what that one does off the top of my head. But if the character after the null is an X, you can run whatever command you want as root. And the result of the command was sent back to you over UDP.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, for example, on the site here, they sent a UDP packet with they just echo pipe netcat to the router, W302R_manufacturer, the null byte X, busybox, telnet D start, or whatever. And now they can telnet into the router, and they have a root shell.
And this is at the OS level, so any router manufacturer that uses this OS, this is a feature they get.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Anybody who knows the little magic string and the magic port number can just run any command they want as root on the router.
And it fires up the listening port by default. Like you boot the device.
And it has a UDP socket listening, waiting for any packet marked with this magic string.
Oh my gosh. Now, is this like for ISPs? Do you think maybe like ISPs wanted a way to...
No, I'm pretty sure it was just for the manufacturer, and it was probably meant to be turned off.
Oh my gosh. I mean, you wonder what is in these. I know I said this last week, but this is why I'm a big fan of replacing these stock firmwares.
Yep. Or just the hardware altogether.
Because I mean,
like when they build this hardware, they would literally worry about the 30 cents it costs to have to be able to shrink it down to having 4 megs of memory instead of 8.
Right, yeah.
Because if you're making 100,000 of them,
Sure.
30 cents is a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so on. But yeah, so this means that you can exploit the router and gain complete remote root privileges with nothing more than Echo and Netcat.
It seems like there should be some sort of legal ramification for that, because these are all edge devices that are sitting out on the internet.
The backdoor only listens on the LAN interface, not the WAN interface.
Okay.
However, it is exploitable over the wireless network, which has WPS enabled with no brute force rate limiting. So you just point a WPA brute forcer at it, and a little while later you can connect to the WAN or to the wireless access, not the WAN, the WLAN. You can connect over the wireless and then own it. So you can easily do your neighbors from your house in like a day or less. Because there's no rate limiting, so you can just pound on it as long as it takes.
Right.
And, the WPA is what, like 7 characters, and the last one's a check digit, so there's not that many possibilities to go through.
Yeah, it seems to me like you could just dedicate...
Also, all the devices ship with the same default WPA key, so you can just try that first.
It is unbelievable, the irresponsibility of these manufacturers. It is like...
And then another researcher over at GitHub, has their blog at GitHub, has a list of a bunch of other firmwares he found that have the same backdoor, but with just a slightly different string. Because the model number is in the string, so you have to know the model number of the router. Although that's probably not that hard to figure out. And also, once you're on the WLAN, you can literally just enumerate through all 20 different versions that are vulnerable, and it's only 20 UDP packets. And they have a fancy built-in ping one, right? So you just send the ping with every version string until you get back the response, and then you're like, okay, that one. So now I can route the router.
One ping only.
Yes. One ping, Vasily. One ping only.
I'm just dumbfounded at the irresponsibility. It seems like such shoddy workmanship. And I don't mean to be Mr. Tinfoil Hat here, but it has, Bruce Schneier even wrote about this, that the NSA has worked with companies to just ask them to, leave us a little something. Give us a little something that we can take advantage of, and you come up with what it is, and then you just slip us this note and tell us how we take advantage of that. And when we need it, we'll let the FBI know, whoever needs to take advantage. Do you think it just seems so like... I mean, you think about what they've created here. They've created a system that responds to UDP packets, and you can do a series of commands based on the data that you send that port. They set up a whole command structure, Alan. It seems like more than a mistake. It's not just something you just leave on.
This was definitely no. They have this whole setup so that they can debug the router and stuff. But yeah, I don't know if it was meant to be left on or not.
Well, come on, though. I mean, it is.
It is only on the LAN interface, but still, yeah.
Yeah.
It's horrible, and they should be punished.
You're right. In fact, I guess my crazy theory would work better if it was on the WAN interface.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that's nuts. That's totally nuts. We got more information in the show notes if you guys want to check out some of the details. It's a pretty good write-up. Lots of good illustrations in that write-up too. So if you're learning about like TCP packets and UDP packets and things like that, that's a great article to go read. By the way. All right, well, so our next story, you might have heard of Box.net. They're sort of a Dropbox competitor. I remember I heard about them because they rolled out like this big promo on Android and iOS. If you signed up, you got like X amount of gigabytes free for life. And I thought about it. I was pretty tempted. And I'm kind of glad I didn't. What's going on with Box.net, Alan?
So Box.com, you mean? I think.
Oh, yeah. I guess it is. I guess I don't know if they have both. Yeah, you might be right.
I don't know. So Box.com is a cloud service like Dropbox and so on.
Yeah.
So in this particular case, there was a reporter for, I think it was IT World, it might have been somewhere else, I don't know, who had an account with them that he used from time to time to share images with his editor and stuff. Because, he loved this whole idea of the cloud, not having to remember if he has the latest version of everything.
Everybody does.
Yeah. His wife also used his account from time to time, and at one point had invited an employee from a large PR firm to upload a file for her site or something. Anyway, later on, Box.com, the PR firm signed up for a corporate account with Box.com. And Box has this feature called account roll-in, where when a big corporation or somebody signs up for a corporate Box account, they can slurp up all their employees' free accounts and turn them into as part of the corporate account, so that all those, your employees can keep using the accounts they already had, but they get all the corporate features. Although I'm not sure if I'd want that. If I had some personal files in there, I wouldn't want them to be under control of the Box administrators.
Right.
My company's guy who's delegated as the Box administrator.
Yeah, oh, totally.
So the interesting thing seems to be here is that Box doesn't ask the user if they would like their account to become under the control of the PR firm. Anyway, but also it can also slurp in accounts that have a deep collaborative relationship with the company. So, if you have a contractor or someone who's worked with the company a lot, it'll slurp up their account. Well, in this case, even though the reporter's account had only, shared this one file with the PR firm or some employee of the PR firm, it slurped in his account into the PR firm's corporate account, even though the relationship was only one file, and it didn't prompt him if he wanted to do it or even notify him that it had done it. So later on, the administrator of the PR firm saw this account with a name that wasn't an employee and just click delete. All right, because they don't want that on their corporate account, which they probably pay some level per account, right? And then Box.com went and destroyed the account because it was deleted. Rather than just unrelating it to the PR firm or something. They just deleted it outright. Later on, the reporter goes to try and log in and can't. He emails Box support, and they're like, there's never been an account with that email address.
Sorry.
It's like, no, they refused to acknowledge that an account had ever even existed. And he forwarded them the emails of him signing up and using the account before. And they're like, there's no account like that in our database at all.
Oh my God.
Apparently when you delete an account there, they delete everything. They don't, just mark it as deleted and you keep a history.
It seems like the appropriate action...
kind of almost like a feature, as a cloud place that actually deletes all your stuff.
Yeah, right, though. It doesn't seem like there's all history, but yeah, you're right. It's like, I was never on that site. Here's what I would here's what would be nice to happen. If I'm a member, if that organization says, all right, we no longer want these files, wouldn't it be great if it just auto-reverted back to the person's personal account?
Well, first of all, it would be nice if it asked me if I would like my account to be taken over by this faceless corporation.
Well, yeah, totally.
That I may or may not have any relationship to.
Yeah. Wow, yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. That's why the headline for the story is like, how a stranger took over my cloud account and deleted all my files.
Unbelievable, actually.
But turns out they don't actually delete the files. Through some probably heroic data forensics, they managed to get the guy's files back for him.
Oh, good.
Even though they weren't that important. He said if this had happened to his Dropbox account, it would have destroyed his life. But his Box account only contained a bunch of product images and things like that.
I've had Dropbox zero out files on me that are now and what's horrible about it is I didn't notice for like 6 months. They're just gone, and they're like intros to some of our old shows and stuff. It just zeroed them out. Kind of a bummer. You saw this cloud stuff. It's like every now and then it's just like a total
there's some
curveball.
Serious risks involved with trusting your files to random cloud storage provider.
Yeah. I was and I still use it. But I've kind of transitioned more to BitTorrent sync. But that could nuke something. I mean, an update could. Who knows?
It's kind of interesting. You think of something like Cloud Raid or something where I don't know how you would want to do it, but I'm thinking something like you run the own cloud thing. It syncs your files up to an own cloud server run by somebody. And from there, it then replicates into like a Dropbox and a Box and a, Google Drive or whatever.
So, we were on the pre-show, we were talking about the Synology NAS unit, and one of the things it has is an app that backs up to Glacier, CrashPlan, and like and Dropbox, and it does like exactly that. It does like cloud.
Glacier, that will. I don't know if I like Glacier.
I'm just saying it has like a series
of
pricing.
Options. If you want to download if you want to restore from Glacier, the prices are ridiculous.
You should have a scale engine backup service.
Yep, working on it.
Oh, well, okay.
Well, why do you think we need to buy a $35,000 worth of storage server?
Because he's crazy. I don't know, Alan, because he's crazy.
Well, that's all for video, so we have
so
to buy even more for storage.
Any other thoughts on this story?
Not really. I just, the cloud is not necessarily safe.
Create your own cloud.
Even if
Own
it's,
cloud.
if the cloud has like super replication and your data is never going to be lost due to a hard drive failure. What about if they delete it by accident?
I would say this. Don't make the cloud your primary source. Like, don't use it as the only place to store your photos or your documents. Like, use it as, you can use it as the primary place you're working from, but maybe, have a local backup and save it somewhere else.
As I'm fond of saying, if there aren't at least 3 copies, it doesn't actually exist.
Yeah.
You just think it does.
Yeah. Working from Dropbox, even though it supports revisions, you just, like, sometimes if you have a big Dropbox, stuff happens and then the window of opportunity passes to revert back. All right, Alan. Well, why don't we just take a quick break right here and thank our second sponsor this week, GoDaddy.com. GoDaddy.com is kicking it up a notch, and right now they're celebrating the new GoDaddy by giving you a great deal. I mean, a really great deal. If you use the code TECH199 when you check out, you can get a .com for $1.99. $1.99. Now, when a .com is $1.99, there's a lot of things you can do. I registered jbtitles.com, made it super easy for us now to vote, and I just took advantage of GoDaddy's forwarding service to pop that JB Titles right over to the longer URL that we have.
Yep.
But when a .com is $1.99, last night on the Unfiltered show, we do all our shows live, right? And so at the beginning of the show, Chase says something like, we should use one of your GoDaddy promo codes to get does Chase have a job yet.com, because he's been looking for like 143 days for a job. About midway into the show, somebody in the IRC chat room went out, registered it, and set up does Chase have a job yet.com. And here's what's great about it. They use the code, right? So they got it for $1.99. Then they used the push-button WordPress deployment to deploy a WordPress instance on a GoDaddy host, set up a beautiful theme instantly, put a little bit of JavaScript code in there, and Bob's your uncle.
A timer.
It's got a timer. It's got a no. It's got links to like his portfolio,
his LinkedIn, so you can get his resume and stuff.
And an email. And you can't see it's us cut off on the video version, but there's an email sign up form at the bottom.
So you can find out the minute Chase gets a job.
And I mean, this guy really did this in about a half hour while we were doing the Unfiltered show. And if you listen to last week's show, you'll hear him say it. Like in the first 2 minutes of the show, he'll just make a joke about it, and then towards by the time we were done, it was all completely set up. And that's what's so great about GoDaddy's, with that fantastic deal and with all of the great services surrounding GoDaddy. You can start with a .com for $1.99, and then later on, you can roll into new things super easy and super fast. As soon as you're ready to move, GoDaddy's ready to move with you. They're great for teams, small businesses, and individuals. And if you use our code TECH199 when you check out over at GoDaddy.com, you're getting a .com for $1.99. Additional .coms, $9.99. Additional years, $9.99. It's a great deal. So if you want to buy that first year $1.99, then just grab a few more years for $9.99, you're really saving a great amount of money.
Amortizes out, you're saving. Still a great price.
It's still a fantastic price. So thank you very much to GoDaddy for their longtime premier sponsorship of the TechSNAP program. They're one of our patron sponsors, and we really appreciate them supporting us.
They're the first sponsor of TechSNAP.
And we really appreciate you guys using that Tech199 to let them know that, hey, thank you very much for keeping TechSNAP on the air, and you guys appreciate them. So thanks to GoDaddy for sponsoring the TechSNAP program. Bum, 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 bum. All right, Alan, so that was a big news segment, but the feedback segment's even hooger. But before we get to that, I just want to remind folks, we have an updated calendar page over at jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar. And you never know, as the holidays approach, as BSD conventions approach, as wisdom tooth removal surgery approaches.
But, the next conference is tomorrow, so I leave tomorrow morning.
Right, I know. So I'm just saying.
It's one of the first conferences that won't affect the show because it's only the weekend, and I meant it. Because it's in the same time zone as me, it doesn't take very long to get there. So
see, but I suspect,
I can leave.
But what we have is, both Alan and I have this wisdom tooth problem. See, I'm just choosing to ignore mine. I'm on a long-term ignoring strategy. However, Alan is facing his challenge.
I've been ignoring mine for like a year already.
Well, so. I'm impressed because you're taking it head on. So if we ever had to reschedule the show, where you would find out about that is over at jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar. Yep. And now that has been updated with some magical code. I believe it's called JavaScript, to update the calendar, so that way it should be in your local time zone when you visit over at jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar.
Yes, time zones apparently are confusing to some people.
They are for me.
I do time zones in my head all the time.
Well, see, I just don't do
that's
math.
That's because I have to think about the whole world all the time.
First of all, I believe math is a construct that we've made up ourselves, and I believe that time is a construct we've made up ourselves. So I just choose not to participate. But I totally embrace it. Others will.
I've just been corrected. Project Morris notes that South Africa is in the same time zone as the UK, but it's a long ways away.
We should note that the TechSNAP program is live on Thursdays at 1 p.m. Pacific over at jblive.tv, which is, Alan?
4 p.m. Eastern, 2000 GTC.
And we also have extensions linked at the bottom of the Jupiter Broadcasting website. If you grab those, it'll automatically take your shopping session to lots of great sites like Amazon, Newegg, Best Buy, Audible, other sites. When you're there, it automatically take your shopping session to contribute a portion of your shopping to Jupiter Broadcasting as the holidays come up. We appreciate if you help us out with that. Or you can just click the links before you shop. It'll take care of that for you. And that helps us pay things like bandwidth bills, lights, and future expansion plans that we're working on right now.
Yes, when he says lights, not just the power, but he actually needs the light bulbs. They're really expensive.
Yeah, they are. It's crazy. Everything is. It's like they decided, oh, you're going to do something that's quote-unquote professional? Well, let us add a 10% markup on that. Or I'm sorry, I mean 10x markup on that. It's ridiculous. Anyways, that's my problem, Alan, not their problem. So with all of that done, let's get into the TechSNAP feedback. Thanks for sending your emails to TechSNAP at jupiterbroadcasting.com or popping that contact link at the top of the Jupiter Broadcasting website, or even better, starting a thread in our subreddit over at links.techsnap.tv. And Mr. Jude, our first email this week comes in from viewer Steve, and he has some Z-Pool problems, Alan. He says, currently I have a RAID Z-Pool. A few days, one of the disks became unavailable, so I grabbed a drive to replace it. Upon rebooting the computer, the Z-Pool did not mount. I exported the pool thinking to attempt to preserve it until the new drive came. I got the new disk, but now I'm receiving errors trying to import it. He gets the error that says, cannot import pool, IO error. Unfortunately, I don't have backup for this. And at any rate, I'm not sure that all is lost, but I don't seem to be making any progress. By the way, I'm currently running off FreeBSD 9.2 on a live CD. He included some information.
But his pool apparently is Linux? Like the output he provides keeps mentioning zfsonlinux.org and things like that.
Yeah, does it?
Yes.
You're right. It does, doesn't it?
Yes.
So you think...
So it sounds like he's trying to use the FreeBSD 9.2 live CD to rescue his ZFS pool that was made some other place.
Slightly
which
dicey.
Should still work.
Yeah.
It's all ZFS now.
Yeah.
He mentions he's using the full recover export stuff command, the extra switches. But yeah, that takes a while and requires a lot of RAM. Especially if you used any deduplication, you're probably in for a bad time.
So is the Z-Pool information stored on one particular drive? And if that drive...
No, the label is written 4 or 5 times to each disk.
Okay.
So each disk contains 4 or 5 copies of the label information.
Okay. So it's not that.
Yeah.
So this cannot import pool IO error. Have you seen this before?
Well, it's probably because it's trying to import the disk that doesn't exist.
Oh, yeah.
I think you should be able to just import a degraded pool without a problem, unless something else is blocking one of the drives. So if the Z pool is in a degraded state, he didn't really describe what the machine looks like, but looking at the output here, it shows the one disk is unavailable, one is online, another one's online, but one of them doesn't say anything. It says the disk name, but doesn't mention its status.
It's his TV pool too. Probably all his TV shows he's got. Oh man, that's a bummer.
Yeah.
Let's see here.
Well, it's funny. I don't know if he's edited some of this, but in one place it says cannot import quote pool quote, which sounds like he's trying to import a pool called pool, whereas pool is obviously TV all uppercase.
Yeah.
I don't know if he was trying to hide that it was called TV and then gave up on that or what.
Down here? No, maybe he's just trying to make it obvious for us. I don't know.
But because I see even further down, he says zpool import ffx pool, which is strange.
Okay, if he's using the wrong pool name, that would cause that IO error.
Well, no, it would usually say no such pool.
Would it? It would say no pool? Okay.
Yeah, because it wouldn't be IO erroring anything.
Chat room says you said Z.
Did I? Well, sometimes I hang around with silly people too much.
Gotcha.
It's like when you get into programming, you have to learn to spell color incorrectly. so that your HTML color codes work.
Wow. I'm not sure how to take that.
Right? Color should be spelled with a U like everybody else does.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Next you're
Anyway.
gonna give me a lecture about the metric system.
Well, yeah. But anyway.
Okay.
I don't know. I needed some more details to look at it, but normally it should just be able to work.
And I wonder if you tried it under a Linux environment that had...
Because it says degraded, not... there's a different keyword it uses when it's, when you've gone too far and it's not coverable.
Yeah.
Faulted. It would say faulted if there was no hope.
But degraded...
Degraded means it should import and work, and once you replace the failing disk, it will go back to healthy.
Steve, if you want to send us some more info or let us know how it goes.
And yeah, he said he was trying another import to see what it does. There's a couple of switches you can add, including one that doesn't actually do the recovery, just tells you what it would do, because some of these options include rolling back, which means losing data, and so you oftentimes will run them with the no-op flag saying, just tell me what you think, or tell me if you're sure this is going to, or if you think this will work before I actually try it, and things like that.
All right, Alan. Our next email comes in from George, and he says, "Hi, folks. I have a doubt about something I want to do with Nagios. I want to monitor a host which is not reachable by the Nagio server. Let's call this host A. But it is reachable by a host which is being monitored by a Nagio server, host B, because it has a NIC on that same subnet as host A.
Yep.
Which way would you recommend I do this? Doing a ping from host B to reach host A and report it to my Nagios? Some parameters I could do and check ping? Any help would be appreciated." So essentially, Alan, is there a way for him to do like a satellite Nagios monitor, that kind of thing?
There's a couple different options. I think there's like a Nagios proxy thing that you can run on some server that's on the network that faces Nagios and on the network that has the servers that you want to monitor or whatever. You can also do passive monitoring. So you could have the host so it depends. If your host is just behind a firewall and so nothing can connect in, you can just have the host send out to the Nagios server a notice every so often saying I'm still alive, kind of thing. Right?
One ping only.
Or, like I use passive reporting like that just to have Varnish gives me data about how many requests per second it's getting.
That's
so
handy.
It says how many requests it's got once a minute. And that lets me graph it without going and bugging Nagios all the time. Right? Because active polling is a lot more CPU intensive in Nagios than...
Sure.
All these different 60 or 80 hosts around the world send in some data about their utilization levels, and it goes into a queue, and every 10 seconds it processes it and updates graphs. So it's a lot less intensive. So if it's just that the machine, you don't want to punch holes in your firewall, then you can do passive reporting and have the machine behind the firewall just connect out to Nagios and report the data passively instead of an active check from Nagios to the machine.
So if he can just send out like that, that would work.
And you can trigger alerts and say, hey, if you don't receive an update from this thing for 20 minutes, then assumes it's down. Or, usually about 3 to 5 times whatever the reporting interval is, or depends on how sensitive you want it to be. But yeah, I think there's some kind of Nagios proxy you can do. Mm-hmm. Or the other thing you do is you can install Nagios on that host B and set it up as a slave. So all it does is monitor stuff on that second LAN and report all the results back to the primary Nagios. That's
definitely a way to go, I think.
Yeah. So often if you have a couple of different data centers or something, you'll have a Nagios worker type thing in each data center, all reporting back to your central Nagios.
Yep. That's what I do for clients that have web servers at the data center, and then the rest of their infrastructure was back at their main office, and they had firewalls at each location. You just have a Nagio server at each end of the firewall. Yeah. It could be a VM even.
Yep.
All right. Good luck, George. Let us know how it goes.
Yeah. So I suppose you could do like a check ping and report it passively, but it's really not that much work to set up Nagios as a slave on the host that is on both networks to report back to your central Nagios.
Very good. Roger writes in and says, "Hi guys, last week, episode 132, you discussed backup, and I have some questions. How long do you think we'll be talking about backup, i.e. restoring complete systems, instead of storage copies of files? I'd guess systems have reached the point in size where restoring from backup isn't efficient anymore. Regarding storage, can purposeful duplication replace RAID?" Purposeful duplication replace RAID,
so
since all
purposely
files
storing the file multiple times.
Right, since all files don't have equal importance. I prefer more redundancy for certain files in my storage pool than others. Given the same file size, 3 plus 1 would suit me better than 2 plus 2 in many cases.
I don't know what he means 3 plus 1 versus 2 plus 2.
I guess 3 copies of one thing instead of 2, 1-to-1 copy of everything else? I don't know.
Or, yeah, like some files will have 3 copies and one will have 1 and some will have... Like, it's a little...
So this is kind of interesting because right now you could say, you know, this area of my storage array, everything that writes to that gets duplicated.
Right.
Okay, so to zoom out, one of the problems with things like purposeful duplication is it doesn't scale great for, like, VM images, right? If you have a VM image that's 40 gigabytes and you want to keep a backup of it, it's kind of easier to write that off to a dedicated backup server than it is to make a few copies of it. And the other thing about backups is a lot of organizations use them for historical purposes. Like, I've worked with doctors' offices and law firms that need certain things at a certain point in time, and so they snapshot that, and then they do like an end-of-month backup, end-of-quarter backup, end-of-year backup.
Right, so they're also doing archiving through their backups.
Yes.
You know, data that they don't normally have active.
Mm-hmm. And they need it for, like, legal reasons to be, like, an archive.
Yeah. And part of it is the idea is that that file becomes read-only as well.
Yeah.
It depends. You know, ZFS has this feature called copies. It's basically a property you set, and every block you write to that data set will be stored X times instead of just once. It tries, but it doesn't guarantee that those copies won't end up on the same disk. So it tries to, like, spread them out between your different disks. So if you have, like, a striped array that has no redundancy and it has 4 disks and you set copies equals 4 or 5, it'll try to make sure at least one of each copy goes on a different disk.
Okay.
But depending on when disks get full, how fast each disk is, and a bunch of different things.
It's a best effort.
Yeah, it's a best effort, not a guarantee.
Yeah.
And, you know,
you're not going to bet the farm
really
on that.
Stripes are really not meant to be resilient at all.
Yeah.
So you really shouldn't do that.
No.
But, you know, if you had a... So, yeah, you really do need RAID. But RAID is not a backup. Right? RAID is mostly about keeping the system operating in the event of a failure, not about keeping all your data safe. Because, remember, backups protect you against more than just hardware failure. What about when you accidentally delete something or accidentally overwrite it, or a file gets corrupted because you were writing to it and the program crashed or something, right? Mm-hmm. So you need more than just RAID. And
duplication could work instead of a full-fledged backup for some use cases, though. Like media files, potentially?
Partly, but how is the copies different than a backup?
It is just a different way of doing a backup.
Yeah, it's just a different way of accounting for the space and so on.
Yeah. It's being more selective. But, like, it's funny because in his email he points out that the price of storage is coming to a point where it's almost like... I've actually taken the flip side, where I'm almost like storage is available enough where it's like, I'll just take a complete backup. I'll just get everything.
Right. Well, his main point was if you have 10 terabytes of data, it will take a long time to restore that.
Oh, I know it does. Yeah.
Right. And so that's when it comes down to your backup system needs to consider this. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you have a separate backup of, say, you can do an hourly backup of your important stuff and only a weekly backup of the less important stuff, and so on. And also, depending on your backup system, like, for example, when we use Bacula, when we do a restore, we can decide what we want to restore. So even though we backed up the entire system,
right,
we can be like, I only need these 4 directories restored right now. Like, that was our solution with FreeBSD servers. It was like, we back up almost everything, but we generally exclude most of the operating system files. Like, that was one of the really nice things about FreeBSD, the way it separates packages in the base system. We can say, ignore USR, bin, user sbin, /bin, sbin, you know, all those directories, and only back up etc, home, and user local. Then, all I have to do is install a fresh operating system of the same version, restore those 3 directories, and the machine's back to how it was.
And then you just build the apps at the current version or whatever you need.
Well,
right?
no, if it's the same version, the apps will just work. Like,
oh, you're backing those up too. Oh,
yeah. So all the apps get installed in user local, right?
Oh, I see. So you're saying you don't back up the OS,
right? I don't back up the OS.
Yeah, yeah.
I may or may not back up the all the binaries of stuff I have installed.
Yeah. And
you want to back up your SQL database but again, we've talked about backing up SQL databases before. It's more complicated, but
yeah.
And so that I can, if what I loved about Bacula was customer deletes a file, accidentally deletes their public HTML directory, I can be like, hey, Bacula, give me that directory and nothing else.
Yeah.
And it does it.
Yeah.
And I don't have to, restore a 100 gigabyte remote backup just to get back, 2 megabytes of somebody's files.
That is very nice.
And so on.
All right. So next email.
So copies can help, but they're not a backup.
There you go. All right.
So, yeah.
Ready? Next email comes from Ben. He wants to take a few pokes. I think he's just having some fun, Alan. He says, some comments made by Alan in episode 132 are offensive to my sensibilities. He says, by the way, I love the show. I've been watching since episode 1, and I'm also a 1333 investor in the Unfiltered show. So thank you, Ben. He says, let's start with PHP and multi-tenancy. I agree 100% with Alan that PHP is better for multiple users on the same box with the same port. Languages like Python, Ruby, and Node require one IP to port per application. This is because they're persistent, allowing the dev to always run code even when the users aren't connected. This is crucial for modern applications that do more than just serve static HTML. Have you tried to run a few technologies like WebSockets on PHP? Good luck! It's things like WebSockets that make today's web snappy and performant and fluid, which are impossible.
I think he's overstating WebSockets a little bit because I don't even know the browsers. Like support for that is pretty new still. Also, I've created long-running daemons in PHP. I wrote a whole video game in PHP.
Oh, snaps.
The whole backend for a video game is written in PHP. And so it has this worker that just runs in the background, and then it has periodic tests. And
what you got now, Ben? What you got now?
It can work. I understand why you want some of this other stuff. And PHP could be run that way as well, but sometimes it doesn't make any sense to do it that way.
He argues
when it's a Python web app that's just serving a blog, why does it need to be running all the time?
He argues that
why can't I just say run this script?
He goes on to lambast PHP even further and says that it forces devs to think inside the box and encourages older, more lame websites.
Well, it doesn't have to if the developer can think outside the box and so on.
I know, this is a lot of anti-PHP we got going here, isn't it? This is like...
Yeah, but, Ruby didn't invent these concepts.
This is somebody from the Ruby lobby here. No, Ben goes on. Now, this part I thought, okay, what about this? He says, new popular hip languages optimized for developer time. For startups paying developers...
The language doesn't make a difference in developer time. The framework does.
Even though these languages take more CPU.
You're not writing something in raw Python. You're using Django or something, right? And there are frameworks like that for PHP.
He says he calls them hipster languages, and he says they're a win with startups. He says you got to consider the Silicon Valley viewpoint. I do agree that hipster startups
want the Silicon Valley viewpoint.
I agree that there's a lot of hipster startups that don't want to use PHP anymore. I can see that happening.
Right, mostly because they're hipsters, not for valid technical reasons. Facebook is written in PHP.
I feel like I just got to look.
They compiled it to optimize it, but I'm not saying that PHP is the be-all, end-all. I'm just saying some of this stuff is just goofy. Basically, the way the Python stuff is set up, you basically have to use VMs, which are not performant and scale poorly, right? Having to have a completely separate VM for each app is just a huge amount of overhead you don't need.
I feel like we just totally took a Coda Radio detour here. Cause this has been an ongoing call. PHP.
But as a sysadmin, I hate all the hipsters languages and stuff.
I'm with you there.
I've done a bit with Ruby, mostly having to do with running Puppet, and I could strangle it and punch it in the face at the same time.
Well, Bob wants to bring us back to the warm blanket of ZFS. He says, hi, Chris and Alan. I'm a longtime listener, and I thoroughly enjoy the discussion of security issues, especially from big vendors. Some of the WTF moments have left me gaping like a zombie in disbelief. I think that UDP Packet story earlier today might have done that. I've recently started running FreeNAS 9.1.1 off a USB flash drive with a single volume comprised of 2 drives, 1 IDE, and 1 SATA. He says 160 megabytes and 2 terabytes. The machine is slightly older hardware, hence the IDE drive. I'm mixing the 2 drives simply out of playing with extending the volume on a newer 2 terabyte drive. My question is this: is it possible to move the contents of the 160 megabyte drive to the new terabyte drive in the volume, and then remove the 160 megabyte drive from the volume, leaving only the 2 terabyte drive? I've Googled for answers, but there's lots about replacing drives, but I haven't found any specifics about how to permanently remove a drive from a volume. I don't have the space to make a new volume and populate it with a copy of the existing volume. I'm curious to hear your answers. Cheers, Bob.
Okay, so yeah, mixing a 160 gig and a 2 terabyte drive together was probably a bad idea. But
That's
anyway,
bad juju. So he wants to say, okay, volume, take everything off this.
Right. So ZFS was designed to allow you to keep expanding, but it was never designed for contracting.
That's so true.
So
okay.
You can use the replace command and replace the 160 gigabyte drive with a different drive. Although, since it sounds like he's doing striping with no parity, means he would have to connect to the third drive, wait for all the data to move to that third drive, and then he could remove the 160.
How does he know all the data is off the 160, though?
When you do the replace command, it'll block until it's fixed.
I see. So, okay.
So the replace command replaces one disk with another disk.
Okay.
Whereas normally you would use the attach command to...
just add a drive.
Well, to add a drive, you use the add command, but that's different. That's adds it as... See, that's where you made your mistake of accidentally adding a mirror when you meant to attach it to the existing thing.
Yep.
So anyway, the OpenZFS project has some work in progress on a way to remove a drive, which will do some indirection and basically map all those blocks to locations on other drives so that you can remove a drive. And basically what will happen is that drive will still exist as a virtual drive containing a giant list of mappings saying this data is actually over here. And that will recurse forever such that, you know, if you keep removing drives and adding new drives and stuff, eventually you'll just have this giant mess of pointers everywhere. So it's not very performant, but it is a feature they're working on adding.
All right. So what can he do now?
Well, if he replaces that disk with a new disk, his pool will just grow. So if he had a second 2 terabyte disk or something, he could just use the replace command and pull out the 160 and get more space. As far as what he can do with having those 2 drives like that, he's pretty much screwed.
Okay.
You have to move all the data off somewhere else and recreate the pool or whatever.
There you go.
And because it's striping with no redundancy, if that drive fails, probably all the data on both drives is unreadable.
Good luck, Bob. Good luck.
Because basically probably 1/4 of every file on his system is written to that 160 gig drive, and the other 3/4 are on the 2 terabyte drive. So that means there'll be just holes in every single file.
Ouch.
You really shouldn't do striping, right? That's why you would do mirroring. But if he had mirrored the 160 and the 2 terabyte, he would have ended up with 160 gigs of usable space.
Yeah.
Then if he removed the 160 gig drive and replaced it with a 500 gig drive, then that mirror would give him 500 gigabytes of usable space. Right? Because it would mirror, and then if you replace the 500 with a 3 terabyte, now you'd have 2 terabytes.
2 terabytes,
because you have 3 and a 2. And then replace the 2 with another 3, and then you'd get 3, and so on.
Bob's your uncle.
So it's meant to survive upgrades, but it really isn't meant for downgrades at all.
Yeah. That makes sense, though. I mean, for what they were going for.
Remember, ZFS was designed as an enterprise file system.
Yeah.
Where it was, we have these problems, and we can throw an infinite amount of money at them to solve them.
We almost never need less space.
No, you never need less space. We need to always be able to add more space. And so once the chassis is full, we need to be able to pull out older drives and replace them with bigger ones and watch the array keep growing.
All right, we got one last email before we do our show and tell, Alan. Mar writes in with just a couple of book recommendations. First of all, he says 2 science fiction books. They're a series, and they're oriented around development and security. The first one is Nexus, and the second one is Crux. It's about uploading an operating system to your brain, a little transhumanism gene hacking. It's written by a former Microsoft employee developer named Ramez Nam. It's an excellent and very fast moving with multiple point of views from characters. Have a nice afterwards discussing research and technology relevant to the stories. Has to be better than anything, he says, written by Tom Clancy. Wow. You know, I don't know. I've been listening to Zero Day from Audible, and I am Alan. So just one more plug for Zero Day. There's a scene where he goes in, and he's a security contractor, and he's got a law firm client that had a computer outage. So a couple of my clients were law firms, and the conversations that they had were literally raising my blood pressure because it was like I was there. It was reliving my contractor past. Like, it is so far has been spot on. I mean, it is.
Well, it's just the difference of it actually being written by someone who actually does this for a living.
Yeah. I mean,
it just has some realism.
Okay. I mean, it was incredible. Like, the guy is a partner of a 3-owner law firm, and he's talking to the guy saying, "Oh, I need to go. We're going to a meeting with the 2 other partners, and I want to tell them something. Can you?" Like, all of the conversations that he was having in the book, I have had with clients. It was really something. So I don't know why he's digging on Tom Clancy, because so far Zero Day, I'm in like chapter 4. I'm just completely loving it.
Zero Day is not related to Tom Clancy.
Oh, well, then why is he bringing up Tom Clancy? Yeah,
because the other book we recommended before, remember the Threat Vector?
That's right. That's right.
And that one's, it mentions the computer stuff, but it purposely doesn't get into too much detail because they didn't want to not get it right.
Yeah.
Because Tom Clancy is not Mark Rusinovich, who does Windows security for a living for the last 25 years.
Yeah.
Or maybe not quite that long, but a long time.
We just started getting a really weird noise on the line.
Did we?
Yeah, I don't know.
Should I hit something?
I don't know.
Fun stuff.
Let's do the show and tell, and then maybe we'll do a hang up, and then share. All right, so you got a new router, right?
Well, it's probably a little overkill for a router, but yes.
All right, and I'll press for this is from IX Systems, who make a lot of. I have their FreeNAS Mini, and you got something brand new here.
Yeah, this is hardware that's not actually out for everybody yet because it hasn't been validated for FreeBSD because it's the brand new Haswell stuff. But there's the front.
Wow.
You see the nice little IX Systems logo, which is backwards in my webcam.
Yeah, it looks good. Now, what's in there? I see 2 fans.
Yeah, so we got the 2 blowers that blow. Yeah, 2 double-ganged ones that blow into the across the CPU, and you got the 2 sticks of RAM in there. And there's a riser card, so you can put a PCI 16X card in, low profile, but still.
It's a 1U unit.
350, 1U short depth.
What's the CPU on there?
That's a
fanless heatsink.
Yeah, it's an E3 1220 V3, so a Haswell Xeon E3.
Hence the
at 3 point something gigahertz.
Hence the fanless heatsink, perhaps.
Oh, almost all Supermicros are fanless.
And how much
these big fans blow through?
Yeah, right. Of course. Yeah, and how much memory's in that guy? I see 2 sticks. 8. Okay.
2 4-gig sticks of ECC, and then I didn't buy a hard drive by it, so I put the operating system on this microscopic USB stick.
That looks like a micro USB receiver for my mouse. That's a storage unit that has storage on it?
That's an 8-gig USB stick.
Oh my gosh. Where did you buy that, Alan?
I bought it from IX as part of the system.
That looks really cool.
And it's got this little USB 3 port inside the chassis that goes into, and that's where the operating system will live.
And are you going to do pfSense, or what are you doing on there?
I'm going to do raw FreeBSD, partly because I'm going to do a little more than just routing on this. As you can see on the back, we have 4 Intel i210 AT gigabit NICs, plus the dedicated IPMI NIC, USB 2 or USB 3, and some 2 ports, serial and VGA.
Nice.
350 watt power supply. Nice little short depth unit with the ears and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, that looks like it's going to... So that's 1U unit. It looks like it's going to slide nicely right into the rack. I wonder...
Yeah, I have that gray rack in my basement, right?
I wonder here... so you're going to do straight up free BSD. I wonder, is this going to be like a segment on BSD Now, or what's your plans there?
Well, before I put the free BSD that I'm going to use in production on it, we're actually going to build an open BSD router on it as a tutorial for BSD Now, which will be not next week, but the week after that. And then I'll put FreeBSD on it and set it up in production, and it'll actually probably connect iSCSI to my ZFS storage server and run a bunch of Beehive guests on top of all the other stuff.
You're going to do Beehive on your router?
Well, at first, I'm going to keep my current pfSense box and use this as for experimenting and stuff. But yes, part of the reason I bought it was I wanted the 4 gigabit NICs. Basically, my current pfSense box is 3 100 megabit NICs. And, well, this is obviously going to be better.
Wow. That is really... So, do you want to say how much you spent on it? Because I can't... Do you remember?
If you configured this and put a hard drive in it, you're probably looking at just under $1,000.
Oh, that's not bad, really, for that kind of gear. I like, too, that...
I didn't put a hard drive, and I cut corners in a couple places, but...
You know what? The chat room has hunted down the USB thumb drive they're using. You can get one. You can get one for $11, and one for, if you want 32 gigs, you can get one for $20. So I'll link to those in the show notes.
I don't know if it's the same one or not. This one's...
yours looks nicer, but this, look at... I don't know if you have a feed up, but it is literally the size of a USB like micro receiver. It's incredible.
It's like smaller than my thumbnail.
It's amazing.
Like when it goes in the USB port, there's literally just this tiny little round thing sticking out. I wanted something reasonably fast, but it's basically going to be read-only once it's configured. So,
all right, Alan, we have one last email to handle before we go.
Somebody asked if that's any better than a gigabit pfSense box and a gigabit switch. This is going to be my gigabit pfSense box with 4 gigabit ports in it.
Yeah.
One will go out to my internet connection, which is 100 megabits and slightly more, actually. Like during burst, it can actually go over 100 megabits, so a 100 megabits NIC is actually limiting it. One NIC will go up to my house's side of the connection. So basically, my house is set up as 2 VLANs. Well, actually more than that, but 2 main VLANs. One is the upstairs of the house, which is my house, and downstairs is an office. So 2 of those ports will be lagged together and go into the office VLAN. One will come to the house VLAN, and one will go to the internet. And that's how this will be configured. And then my ZFS storage box has had 2 onboard gigabit ports, but one of those got fried by lightning.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
So it's got... luckily, it was the non-Intel one. It was the Alcatel one. Or not Alcatel, Atheros one that got fried. So the Intel one's still good. So that provides this connection. And then it has a 4-port gigabit controller, which will do some hardware pass-through probably to some beehives, and also a giant lag because it's the FreeNAS or my ZFS server.
But Nuts in the chat room says he's running... Nuts is doing a Bastion host. He's got a pfSense router. He's got... and a few other things all running Beehive. So maybe you're not crazy, Alan. Maybe you're not cray-cray. All right. There was one last message that I really wanted to get to this week, and I just forgot it, but he's actually here live today. So let's see if we can answer this before we run. Sure. He wrote this up on the TechSNAP subreddit over at TechSNAP, or links.techsnap.tv. He said, I have some questions for you guys and the rest of the community. I've been listening to most of the JB shows for a few months now, though I'm burning through the backlog pretty quick. I found the network through Coda Radio. Shout out to Mike, who actually just hired him as a part-time dev. That's cool. I'm quite enjoying Last and Unplugged and TechSNAP as well. He says, I'm a 24-year-old sysadmin who's just above water, professionally speaking. I'm an admin of 20 or 30 servers, almost all of which are Windows boxes. My company also has end-user support and off-the-street warranty repair. It's a bit of a weird mix that I think, could be separated out in different departments. He says, I'm quite tired of doing end-user stuff, and I hate dealing with clients who don't know what they're doing or talking about. I actually don't mind server admin as part of the job. I just feel embarrassed at the state of the network I inherited. I started a very slow transition to the world of Unix by setting up a grand total of 1 production LAMP server. I've been stuck in a rut for the past month or so, hating my job more and more and feeling on the edge of being burned out in general. I just had the realization today that I need to take responsibility for my own happiness in my job and my career. While I'm still actively looking for a new job and more Linux-oriented admin in a bigger shop, I figured I should make the time I have left as good as it can be, and coincidentally help the company I work for as well. Well, good on you, man. Good outlook on that. We're a pretty small shop, so here's a few things I need to accomplish before I leave. I want to somehow move away from end-user support and focus on more server stuff. Okay, there's one question. Start the transition of some of the servers to Linux and or open source solutions, and maybe change the boss's mindset on solutions we have now. Fix some of the horrible security practices at our shop, and maybe get a raise out of some of this. Further my own knowledge and start working from home. Wow. Wow. Do you have any advice
Working
on any
from
of that?
home is hard.
Yeah.
Very hard not to get distracted and very hard not to goof off and
I
actually get things done.
I hate to make this my answer, but security practices, transitioning to open source, and working from home, and getting more money, those are all culture things. Those are all things that I realize you're trying to make while you're at the job a good experience until you leave, but yeah, you need to leave. Like, that's all. Dude, I have. It is not worth your life energy to try to bend a company to your will, because there are other companies out there.
If they don't want to pay attention to security, it's really hard to make them.
Yeah.
I've pointed it out quite a few times now, but there's the video from BSDCan about converting a Linux shop to FreeBSD. The same concepts would apply for converting Windows to open source kind of thing. And, there's kind of gives you the idea of what you have to do. But in the end, you have to convince them why they need to do it.
Yeah.
And if you can't, then they're never going to.
So the only way you can accomplish something like this in a company is if you are seen as like some sort of advocate of change, and that people follow you. Because
it's
otherwise,
not just an advocate of change because people hate change.
Yeah.
Right. It's more that we need to do this in order to accomplish some goal.
Yeah.
That is really, really important.
Yeah. There's certain things you're going to be able to. You might be able to get them to move the meter on. A few things, like what I was.
Our Windows servers need to be replaced.
Yeah.
And we can replace 5 of these with only 2.
Right. And
FreeBSD
you can show licensing cost differences. You can do performance. There's ways you can make a monetary argument for something, and that's usually a pretty safe bet.
And a lot of times they'll be like, sure, using open source is less license cost, but it's going to take you longer to set it up, or there's going to be this conversion phase.
And the truth about licenses is
it's going to be
businesses. It is a huge pain in the ass to manage, especially at larger scales. But at the end of the day, it's a one-time purchase. And it is only a factor in the overall total cost of ownership. I know that sounds like a Microsoft talking point, but it is true. It doesn't generally get them to sway too far one way or the other. But if you can make it as part of an overall case, you might see some progress there. Push forward for sure. Absolutely. And if you'd like to help them out, go over to links.techsnap.tv. There's already a good thread that's been started up about people that are weighing in with their thoughts and things like that. I'll just give you this. I've worked in companies where I've tried to make some of these changes. I have been successful to a degree. I also then exposed myself politically and to a vulnerability of when things didn't go right. Blame Chris. And at the end of the day, you want to work with people who get it. Because if you're working with people who don't get it, then you're always going to be fighting something. So I think you have a great attitude. Make the best of it while you can. I totally understand where you're coming at about being burnt out on end-user support and wanting to focus on servers. I totally grok that. Let me ask you this, though.
Unless there's somebody else that's going to do the end-user support, I don't see how they're going to let you do that.
Do you find yourself getting... So I know, even though I don't really like doing end-user support, when I solve the problem and walk away with them being happy, that feels good. Like that'll make a bad day. Like when I was a contractor and I'd had like disaster after disaster that I was having to deal with. If I then broke it up with some what at first glance seem like menial end user tasks, like I've got an Exchange server that just ate itself, and this user wants me to help them get Flash working. At first glance, that seems like a massive misbalance of priorities, and it can be very frustrating and stressful. However, the reward, like the dopamine that my brain squirts, that goes into my blood system, my bloodstream, like that made me feel better. Like I fixed their problem, and they appreciated that I fixed their problem. So sometimes you can find some reward from end user support. If you can find that, that'll help you get through it a little bit. That's my advice to you, is focus on the aspects of it, the interaction, the conversation, the solving problems for them, showing them maybe how to do something a little bit better. And even if they're all dumb and they never get it, even if after 1,000,000 times, maybe you've just moved them forward a little bit, it's still some sort of accomplishment that you can, at least walk away with. That's my advice there, Alan. What do you say? Good enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say.
Very good. All right. Well, don't forget you can email the TechSNAP program. Just go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com and click that contact link and choose TechSNAP from the drop-down. Or even better, start a thread in our subreddit over at links.techsnap.tv. But Alan, with its feedback all done, it's time for the TechSNAP Roundup. Welcome to the TechSNAP Roundup. Yeah, that's what that crazy music means. Now, the Roundup are stories that didn't quite fit at the top of the show, but we still want to talk about them, give you some links to follow up on your own. Sometimes these links come from our subreddit over at links.techsnap.tv. And Alan, it's a big roundup this week, and the first one is a big story. It comes as part of the NSA leaks provided by Edward Snowden, and that is that the NSA accessed the president of Mexico's personal email account. And they're upset about it, too. They are not happy about this one. Talked about this a little bit in last night's Unfiltered. Not just the president of Mexico, but also Angela Merkel from Germany.
Yeah, the Chancellor of Germany, there's suspicion that her cell phone was tapped. Yes,
cell phone.
Which is interesting because it would be the German telephone company that would do that. I would like to know a little more detail on how the NSA, like, did they put spyware directly on the device or what?
They also had access to the previous Mexican president's email account. So this has been an ongoing thing that the U.S. has gotten untold amounts of intelligence from. And of course,
well, the NSA's job is to spy on foreign governments.
Yeah, I mean it is, right? We're probably going after.
It was only ever a big deal when they were spying on Americans, because as a Canadian, I always assumed the NSA was spying on everything I did.
Yeah, they probably are. They're probably spying on this very call.
Well, it's kind of their mandate.
It is. Yeah. It's although as creepy as that is. All right. Yeah. Any other thoughts on that one?
No.
Next story on the roundup. A router flaw. Go ahead.
Yes. ThreatPost has an interesting article on some ASUS routers where if you go to a certain URL, you get all this diagnostic information, including the administrator password in plain text.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, geez. So it's like your router IP address /QoIS/QoIS_finish.htm. And Bob's your uncle. It gives you all that info.
There's a firmware update to fix it, but not everybody's deployed it yet.
Yeah. All right. Next story in the round of Microsoft is investigating claims that some Bing ads are redirecting users to malware.
Yep. Common problem with advertising networks, but you would think Microsoft, since they own the ad network that would be displaying ads on Bing, would audit the ads displayed on their own site a little more.
And also develop malware software, anti-malware software. Okay. We're rocking. Next story on the roundup. Krebs on security has a story. Nordstrom finds cash-registered skimmers. This is, not a surprise, but interesting.
Yeah, so a lot of credit card scanning devices actually connect as a keyboard, right? They have a PS2 connector, and basically what they do is you have the software when you swipe the card, they key in the number really quickly. So if you get a little tiny keylogger that just goes between the computer and the credit card terminal.
Like the one I bought off ThinkGeek.
Yeah. It's about this big. Usually has a couple of gigs of storage, flash storage built into it. Some of them actually have Wi-Fi, so you can download the captured data and erase it, so there's room for more captured data without actually having to go and retrieve the device.
Nice.
Because the risk of getting caught is highest when you're installing it or removing it, or removing it, downloading the data and reinstalling it. So one that you can do that wirelessly. If you can sit out in the parking lot of the grocery store and download all the stolen credit cards, then yay, right?
Absolutely. Fascinating.
So yeah, they found these little ones. They're colored purple, so they look like the standard keyboard connector, so that people don't even notice. Because some of the credit card terminals don't have the purple connector. Because some of them predate the color coding of the computer stuff.
Yeah.
Or they're not a keyboard, so they don't necessarily look purple. And so with the purple part there, nobody would notice. And so apparently what they did is 2 or 3 guys would go into a store. 2 of them would distract the cashier while the other guy, installed this little thing in the cash register.
Well, and like we've talked about in the last couple episodes, you could just show up like you own the place, get a clipboard, get yourself a jacket, and say, "Oh, excuse me, ma'am, I'm from the blah 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 company, NCR."
But then somebody might remember or mention it. Something. If you distract the person and do it quietly, then they don't even know you did it. And only later, when they trace the problem down, did they go back to the security footage and see it happen.
Surprise, surprise, Alan. An area that continues to be of interesting innovation is undersea cabling and maybe even modifying the protocols that run over those undersea cables.
Well, this one's actually about using the sea itself. So this one's transmitting data through the water.
The motion of the ocean, as it were.
Not quite. But yes. So the idea is to connect things like offshore platforms, or possibly cruise ships, but probably not. Or even if you had a beach and you set this up, all the pleasure crafts and stuff could just have Wi-Fi or something.
That's awesome.
I don't know. That's just weird to think about people doing that. But anyway, so this is from a university in the States, and they're looking at streaming the internet. What changes they'd have to make to TCP/IP to be able to stream data through water, which could have all kinds of interesting uses.
Gosh, no kidding. Wow. All right, next story, Intel. Blaming Broadwell delay on manufacturing glitch.
Well, yeah, so the Broadwell, which is the new replacement for Haswell, which was supposed to start production in this quarter, the fourth quarter of 2013.
Not happening?
They pushed it back because too many of the chips would come out faulty. So the yield of, how many chips they try to make versus how many come out usable, the yield was too low, so they're pushing the production batch back and making some more changes, hoping to solve the problems.
As Tony Soprano points out in the IRC, if back to our last roundup story, if they got internet through the ocean, that would make one ping only more possible. Okay. This next one's kind of about labels and about how the term hacker has been bastardized and doesn't mean what we all consider it. Call yourself a hacker, watch your ex-boss seize your PC without warning.
Kind of. So this one is a company the guy used to work for is suing him because he started a new business and they think that his new business is kind of infringing on stuff he built for them.
Yeah.
Making a cheap knockoff of it or something.
Yeah.
But because on his personal webpage or his LinkedIn or something, he claims that he was a hacker. Or he likes hacking things or something like that.
I like hacking things and I'm never going to stop or something like that. That's what he said.
Because of that, they claim that they needed to seize his laptop without any notice to him, because if they did the normal thing where they notified him that they needed to search his laptop or whatever, he would just post their code out on the internet in such a way that they couldn't be traced back to him being the one posting it. It's like, so the test for your Fourth Amendment rights is if you're smart enough to be able to do certain things, then you don't get this right. That doesn't make any sense to me.
No, it doesn't.
But basically, the court is saying because he could destroy evidence, that they need to be able to seize his computer without any notice to him.
Gosh. Because he's a hacker and he's never going to quit.
Right.
I guess we have to call ourselves computer analysts or engineers or whatever now. We can't call ourselves computer hackers. I
guess. I don't know how that word denotes whether or not you're able to delete something off your computer.
Yeah.
Or destroy evidence in some way or other.
It's like, yeah. All right. Should we talk about Netgear ReadyNASes and the vulnerability that could do...
Well, we talked about the vulnerability quite a while ago. And so the fix has been out for more than 3 months. Mm-hmm. But a follow-up scan indicates most people have not patched the ReadyNAS against this very, very serious vulnerability. And this is only considering ReadyNASes that are exposed to the internet, not ones that are only inside LANs.
Right.
So lots of people have their Netgear with its ass hanging out on the internet and haven't been installing the patches.
It goes back to the point we always make, is these embedded devices just do not get updated properly.
Exactly.
Yeah, and this kind of just proves it.
And in this case, it's an appliance, not an embedded device, but still, the same thing applies. People don't update them.
Now, what has been obviously a bit of a disaster rollout here in the States, the ACA healthcare exchanges. Well, it looks like, according to the Slashdot article, that the contractors have a history of security failures. Little snafus in their past, Alan.
Yep. Both of them have a series of... one of them was responsible for Thrift, was it? The retirement plan thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Same company. The government keeps hiring the same contractors. Possibly because most good contractors don't want to go anywhere near a government thing that's just never going to be right.
Yeah, you don't want that on your resume.
Yeah.
You're not going to use that to get any clients. Huh. Well, go figure, huh? Go figure.
And then, lots of places have security best practices and rules and stuff to ensure that things are safe. But we all know people are not great at following rules.
Right.
Even in cases where you would think they would be.
Like our next story. Nuclear officers napped with the blast door just left wide open.
Right. So these are the guys that work in the missile silos.
Yep.
They work a 24-hour shift, so they are actually allowed to have a nap. That's allowed. But if one of them is going to take a nap, the blast door, which is very big and has to be closed, and there has to be so no one else is allowed in the facility, and the door has to be closed before somebody's allowed to go to sleep. And only one of the two guys is allowed to sleep at a time.
Otherwise, when you're sleeping, somebody might walk in and, I don't know, launch a missile.
Well, it's more that if anybody's going to be able to come in or is in, both people have to be awake because, the two-man rule and so on.
Yeah.
I imagine part of the impetus for this is that I'm guessing the blast door, because it's so heavy, takes like 20 minutes to open or close, probably, or more. Because it's sealed by, remember those like giant metal pins that lock it down? Because it's meant to, let those guys survive a nuclear detonation right on top of the silo. But yeah, so they were caught with one of them napping without the door shut. Now, there's other levels of security before you get to that door, right? Like the entire base is patrolled by Air Force guards, and there's security cameras, and you'd have to get down the elevator, which requires like a key card in order to even get to this blast door. But the whole point is that, there's rules, and they were strictly followed for a long time. But now it seems that with the threat not being as severe, the morale and the fastidiousness of the people is lacking.
Yeah, it's slipping.
People are not taking the job as seriously as they used to.
Speaking of not following the rules, remember that rent-to-own place errands where they had put the spyware on people's computers?
And then claim they didn't?
Yeah.
Well, they know it.
little slap on the wrist for errands. They just settled with the FTC over that whole shenanigans. Yeah. They got 48. They're in 48 different states, too, which is pretty incredible. I don't see the amount they settled for. Did you catch that?
No. Vague recollection, it might have been about $4 million. Not very much.
Yeah. Oh, $16,000, up to $16,000 per infraction, but not all infractions will be that much.
Right.
Pretty weak, really, but who knows?
But it seems like they were capturing like credit card numbers you entered. Although I'd be hesitant to use my credit card on a rented computer, but I guess sometimes you don't have a choice.
Yeah, well, I suppose so, right? All right, now we'll end the roundup with a video that you've linked in here, physical access attacks and fun bypass tricks. It's a 55-minute video, so if you need a little extra, should I play a little bit of it, Alan?
Sure.
Okay, here, I'll play a little.
Kind of a weird thing. All right, so let's talk about SetHC shenanigans. Now, if you remember, years ago, this came out for Windows XP. And what you do is you find the file sethc.exe. Now, that's hotkeys. Now, in Windows, if you're at your computer right now, if you hit the Shift key 5 times really, really, really fast, it's going to pop up SetHC. And it's going to say you can enable sticky keys on your system. So you can make that command of hitting a key 5 times trigger something. Now, it used to be you just go to your System32 directory, and you would replace the code for sethc.exe with the code for cmd.exe. The easiest way to do that would be copying it to your desktop, renaming or copying cmd.exe to your desktop, renaming it to sethc.exe, and then copying it back. And when it says, do you want to overwrite this? Yes. That was the easiest way to do this. Now, that's a cool trick because when you log out of the system and you hit Shift 5 times, it pops up a command prompt instead of sticky keys. You're basically replacing the code.
So it pops up the command prompt running as the system user because nobody's logged in yet.
Yeah.
So you even have more power than the administrator.
Yeah. Yeah, your system level account.
Yeah. But doing that kind of requires that you log in first. So they continue to talk about what you do is you turn the computer on, and as it's starting up, you turn it off. Turn it on, as it's starting up, turn it off. And when you turn it on the third time, it's like, Windows seems to be having trouble starting. Would you like to start rescue mode?
Right.
And then you're like, yes. And they're like, try to figure out what's wrong. And it says, can't figure out what's wrong. Would you like to view the details? And you say, yes. And it pops up this log file in Notepad. Right? Well, if you go File Open or File Save As, then you have this little modal dialog for the Explorer. In that, you can go to the System32 directory, copy CMD, and paste it over SetHC. So even though you weren't given a shell prompt, you can rename that file. Then you just reboot and shift root.
Very nice.
And they also talk about DMA access with FireWire. So you plug this little FireWire device in, or you plug your laptop into the victim computer with FireWire. You can scan the memory.
Yep.
Find the
same with
the
Thunderbolt.
Find the DLL that does the authentication. Make a live patch it so that it just returns true every time. Then you just type in the username and any password, and it lets you in.
Yeah, FireWire and Thunderbolt are on the PCI bus, so you're essentially
they can do full DMA so that
Yep.
the CPU doesn't get to have to get involved with memory data transfer.
Yeah.
But it kind of
that gives them their performance, but that also introduces those security risks. Of course, now that's physical access.
It's the same way. No, that's the same way that the viruses running on your video card can log all your keys.
Wow. Good talk. And Alan will have that linked at the bottom of the roundup. In fact, links to everything Alan talked about are in the show notes, provided with copious notes. And I'll link also to that super cool micro USB thumb drive that is awesome. And I can't believe they even have those things in 32 gigs. It's amazing. Absolutely unbelievable.
Well, yeah, like I have a 32 gig one that's not at my desk, but it's a little bigger and it's bright orange.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I wanted something big enough I wasn't going to lose it.
Yeah. All right, Alan, anything else we should cover before we run? I think that's it, isn't it?
No, that's good.
All right. Well, then I want to encourage you to join us live. Head over to jblive.tv at 1 p.m. Pacific, which is
4 p.m. Eastern, 2000 UTC.
And you can also catch us at jblive.info for the audio edition. We also make torrents and torrent RSS feeds of these episodes available. If you'd like to help us defer the bandwidth costs by downloading the torrent version of this episode, you can do so. Also, join us in our subreddit over at links.techsnap.tv. You can submit discussion threads, vote on items, submit items you think should show up in the show, and even submit candidates to the Hall of Shame. We haven't had one of those for a while.
Nice.
Always watching all that stuff. And, of course, you can email us, techsnap@jupiterbroadcasting.com. All right, Alan, well, have yourself a great week, all right, sir?
Yep.
And you too, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning this week's episode of TechSNAP. We'll see you right back here next week.